comic for heroic warriors.
Welcome to our Masters of the Universe Revolution review and reaction. I am John.
I'm Katie.
I am Martin.
I'm Josh Delayancourt.
So we all just got done watching Masters of the Universe Revolution, which is the sequel to Masters of the Universe Revelation. And it is quite possible that when we are talking about it, we will use the terms revelation and revolution interchangeably, because that's what I tend to do when speaking about it, because they both begin with an R.
It is a little confusing.
I thought we could do our initial thoughts first that are spoiler-free, as usual. So just like a little section here of spoiler-free, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty. So who would like to start? I don't want to be the first one.
Okay, I'll start.
Yeah, take it.
All right, so spoiler free. We're going to keep this. So I'm going to, for a minute here, focus a little bit on the storytelling. I obviously, once again, will mention that I cannot see the animation, so I don't have any comments on that. But I listened to the show, and I care a lot about the story. So quick review. We're in Revelation parts 1 and 2. Part 1 I thought was really good and well written. Part 2 not so much. Part 3, or Revolution, I think is much better written. I still have quibbles and nitpicks with bits and pieces of the story that we will get into later, but it is a much more cohesive storyline than we got in especially part 2 of Revelation. And it reminded me a lot in tone to Mike Young 2000X. So that appealed to me as well. It felt like it almost could have been part of that series. In the tone and the way it was written and the voice acting and kind of everything in a lot of ways. So overall, an improvement for sure.
Nice. Katie?
My ranking is similar to Josh's. I did rewatch Revelation over the last couple of days just because it had been a while, and I wanted to refresh my memory about what came before Revolution. And part 1, I still like it a lot. Especially the first episode is very reminiscent of the old show from the 80s, so it's got a nice place in my heart. Part 2, still don't like it. There's just some things that are hard to stomach. It doesn't quite feel like He-Man to me still, but this new one, Revolution, I freaking loved it. I've watched it twice already, and I want to watch it again. It made me laugh. It made me emotional. It hit a lot of good spots for me with all the characters. The voice acting was on point. Like, they killed it. The animation was fantastic. The writing was fantastic. Yeah, there's nothing that stands out to me that I don't like about Revolution. I think it was very enjoyable.
Martin?
Yeah, similar to Josh and Katie. I think I watched part 2 and thought it was a bit of an uneven 5 episodes after loving the initial 5 episodes. Didn't dislike it by any means, but thought it was maybe the weaker of those 2 parts. And this one I thought was definitely a step up. A bit more coherent, a bit better written. Certainly, like, the dialogue felt a lot better to me. Animation was excellent. If I had one nitpick, it was a bit too short. I mean, they packed a lot into a few episodes, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was executed really well. Very easy to watch again. I think I watched it like back to back on the same day. I went through and watched it again. It was a very easy movie-like watch.
So I agree with all of you, actually, for the most part. I did not rewatch Revelation on purpose. I just kind of had my lingering feelings of that. I liked part 1. I did not like part 2. I don't I don't remember how many times I watched part 2. I might not have even rewatched that one fully, other than kind of scrubbing through it. Revolution, like Martin just said, felt like a movie to me more than 5 episodes. So I really liked that. It was a very easy binge. I also rewatched it almost immediately after the first binge because it was that good. Like already mentioned, really the only thing is it suffers from being too short. I think for the amount of content and story development they were doing to kind of wrap it up in case this is the last portion that we get of this kind of continuity. It did feel a bit rushed. That would be my main complaint if I had to put a complaint on it. But it felt like they course corrected, like they heard the complaints about Revelation. I'm not putting validity on all of like the vicious complaints, but there were valid complaints for Revelation. Regardless of Tila, just even characterizations that I thought shouldn't have happened, like Savage He-Man and things like that. This one I thought was way more spot on, especially with the tone. I thought all of the voice actor changes were actually upgrades. No disrespect to like Sarah Michelle Gellar. I like her a lot as an actress, but as I said in our reviews of Revelation, there was just something about her voice that did not fit Tila for me. Like I thought maybe more Adora actually for her voice, but Melissa Benoist, who was Supergirl on the CW show, I thought the change to her and Tila was fantastic. By far a vastly upgraded Queen Marlena with Gates McFadden, which we can talk about, in the spoilers. So I thought all of those, the new voice actors were also great with William Shatner. Surprisingly good, I thought, because I was like, William Shatner. But no, I really enjoyed that as well. So really my only nitpick in a general sense is that it was a little rushed for what they were trying to do. But otherwise, I think, and online, it's been getting such a positive response. So I think, I hate to phrase it, that you kind of had to maybe make the mistakes that you made in Revelation in order to get a very, very good Revolution. I think is safe to say. But I think what's great is, so we all kind of have a similar opinion. So I am interested to see how we go when we delve now into kind of the nitty gritty and the spoilers. So spoilers.
Before we get into spoilers, I want to just add a couple of quick things kind of based on what everyone else said as well, just really quick. One, we all agreed that it sounds like that the writing and the story were much better this time out. I did notice in looking through the credits for these that all 5 episodes were written by the same 2 people, which was not the case with Revelation. So that might have helped with the kind of cohesive story that we got. It was fewer cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. I guess that's the main thing. I would also throw in, I'll get deeper into this with the spoilers, but I also want to throw in that I feel like in Revolution, they did a much, much better job of drawing from existing Masters of the Universe mythos and lore and things that have come before, and incorporating that rather than trying to create new things that don't quite fit or change things that were already established, which they did too much of, especially in part 2 of Revelation, which was, some of my issues with that one. This one, they kind of drew from all across different media of Masters in a much better way that all seemed to mesh a lot better without trying to shoehorn in a lot of stuff that made the fans very angry with the Revelation at times. And I think one way to sort of sum all that up is Revelation, especially part 2, felt more like Mattel saying, this is what we wish the 80s cartoon was, a toy commercial. And we're going to make sure we get as many toy things in this as possible, whereas this one felt more like the story came together more organically, and the pieces that were there from past incarnations were much more organically incorporated into the story they were telling, rather than it feeling like a toy commercial.
Valid
Agreed.
point.
Who were the writers, by the way? I kept missing that at the beginning of the episodes, and I meant to go back and look and forgot. Do you remember their names?
Kevin Smith and Tim Sheridan.
Tim Sheridan. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome job.
He did like Tim had done things like, Justice League and things like that. And DC Comics.
Cool.
And of course I think we know who Kevin Smith is.
Yes.
So basically the general plot, spoilers, is you have the Horde invasion. We get backstory on similar Horde. We get backstory on Skeletor. We find out he's Keldor, Randor's half-brother. He-Man's power gets upgraded. Tila's powers as the sorceress get upgraded. And then we live happily ever after. I would say that's the quick and dirty summary. So, but what would you guys like to start with?
I mean, should we, I think going through more or less chronologically is probably best. We don't have to linger long on every episode. I think one thing I wanted to mention, so the first quibble, I have a few quibbles that we'll be getting out as we go along, but my first quibble with this was, I was not super, I had a hard time buying in, let's say, to Randor's death at the very beginning of the series. I feel like it would have felt more authentic if they tried to heal him and there was some, technobabble, as we might say in Star Trek fandom or something like that, some reason why he couldn't be healed, whether it was too advanced or whatever the issue was, rather than just I'm done, see you guys later, which is, it didn't feel like Randor to me. So that was the setup for the show, and I get why they had to let him die, but it didn't. That was one of the few things in the entire Revolution thing that felt out of sync with the character to me. And what did you guys think?
Yeah, now that you say that, I agree. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that would make more sense in your version.
This is why I didn't watch Revelation before Revolution, because I do feel characterizations of the characters changed slightly in Revolution. Like when I was watching it and thinking back to Revelation, like remember how just like, I'm sorry to say it, but like such an asshole Randor was in Revelation.
Yeah.
Like this was like a complete thing, like, no, the king must die, blah, blah, blah. I like this characterization way better than how he was portrayed though in Revelation. So I kind of liked when he stopped Tila from trying to heal him, because he was kind of like, hey, I'm the king, I've served my time, it's time for Adam to grow up and take on what he needs to do. So I kind of liked that aspect of it, but I don't think it necessarily fits with how he was portrayed in Revelation.
I was a little confused as to why he was dying, because there's an explanation that Granomir gives in the second episode or the third episode, where it is to do with the revelation of part one and the event. And I was like, is Randor affected by that? He's just a guy. Like, why would he be? Is it because he's a descendant of King Grayskull and he's sort of linked to the magical goings-on of the universe? I don't know whether I just misunderstood that part, but did everyone else think the same thing?
I don't remember Granomir saying anything about it. He probably did, and I just forgot. All I remember was them saying he had some kind of disease and it had been progressively getting worse, and he just didn't tell everybody. Which there's a whole lot of that in Revelation and Revolution. That's just kind of a recurring theme. You have a secret, you don't tell anybody. It's like that has not gone well for the past 2 parts. Why would it go well now? But yeah,
I don't
feel a little thrown in there.
To other events, but I kind of got the impression that he was also affected by the mysterious thing that was killing Granomir, because when Granomir is told that the king is dying, his eyes sort of widen and there's a sort of visual of him going, interesting, sort of thing. So I didn't know if that was why Randor had died, like he is in some way linked to everything else in Eternia. I don't know. I might have just made that up entirely, but that was why I thought he was dying.
Well, there could have been more, like, let's say, when they're fleshing out the story, right, there's some things that get cut. And there's things in this, like, just like out of the blue mentioning Anwat Gar. And if you're not familiar with the Mike Young cartoon, or if you did not read the prequel comic book for Revolution, I feel like casual fans that are just watching this because they were He-Man fans into 80s would have no idea what they're referencing, because it's not developed at all in the storyline of this cartoon series. So it could be something like that, where it was a bigger part maybe of the plot that kind of got cut. I could see that, because there was a weird dynamic with the whole Granomir thing when Tila was talking to him, even about like paying respects, and yeah, it was all very kind of mysterious.
I thought, though, that they did, as far as Granomir goes, they did a really good job with it felt like Granomir, right? Like the way he's been portrayed in the past. That's still that sort of petulant child, but also this wise old dragon, and that sort of mix, very similar to the Dragon in the Landover books, if anybody's ever read those. But John Delancey voiced Granomir, and while he did not sound in anything particularly like Granomir from like the Filmation series or whatever, thought they got the characterization little bit modernized, but it still felt like Granomir to me.
I liked his inclusion. I didn't necessarily care for the kind of like shoehorning of he was like in control of the snake powers. That was kind of odd to me. I would be on board with he knew about that and like maybe how to get them, right? But kind of that he was controlling them, and like maybe because we know more things about like, well, what about King Hiss and other characters, that are not included in this. That was a little confusing to me. I loved, though, when Tila when she was in Dark Smoke and she sees the tapestry on the wall and is like, there's 4 towers, which makes sense since they were including Havoc as one of the powers, right? So you had the Zor, the snake, and then you had Havoc. That there was actually a 4th tower, which I'm sure is a thing that they would love to explore, like the backstory on Havoc, if they were able to make more episodes, or perhaps in a comic book or something. But I thought I liked that explanation of it. I just didn't understand why Granomir was like directly giving the snake power to somebody.
Like, as someone who completely forgot where that came from, that was in Mike Young, right? I mean, I think it was also in other things, but it was mostly in Mike Young.
Yeah, the Snake Men at least were in Mike Young.
Yeah, it's been a while since I watched it, so I don't remember much about King Hiss or the origins of the snake power and Green Goddess and all that. I know it's a thing. it's never been one of my favorite things, I guess, so I don't recall much about it. So for me, as someone who doesn't remember every detail of every He-Man show ever, it was fine. But I get that if you know the backstory more, that you would want something else to happen with that.
Well, and it did kind of create a good cohesiveness, though, right? Because we don't really have that strong anyway of a origin for Tila in the snake form. That was more like mini comic territory, right? So I didn't mind that aspect of it at all. I think I just was confused about Granomir being involved.
Yeah, well, they did pull that together pretty well, right? Because in the past, we didn't really have a solid understanding of not just like Tila in the snake armor, but she's a hero, right? And then we've got Snake Mountain and the Snake Men, who are very much on the villainous side of things. So kind of pulling that together, I thought worked pretty well. The gods that they mentioned from the past were Zor, Havoc, and what was the third one? Was that Serpos? Or what did they say?
They said, yeah, it's
the
Ka,
snake, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like her staff. So, which I think is interesting. I feel like this is pure speculation on my part, and it's kind of coincidental because of some books I've been rereading recently. But I kind of feel like they're somewhere in the creative team working on this, perhaps on Revelation as well, but in Revolution especially with this whole three gods and the Preternia being part of the afterlife thing, and all of these bits and pieces that they put together. These are concepts very similar to Dungeons and Dragons and the Dragonlance novels that were born out of Dungeons and Dragons back in that era. I know the competing series that for Dungeons and Dragons, Tunnels and Trolls, Larry DiTilio worked on, and so that kind of filtered into a lot of the stories he wrote back in the day as well. But this idea of like the three gods and sort of the more like quasi-religious aspects of this particular series, the Revolution series, feels like they drew some inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons and that sort of thing.
Martin, you had something to say. I cut you off earlier.
Oh, it kind of lined up with what you were saying, but I was just going to say that it was nice to see them just, when you look back at the three powers, the four towers, everything seems to have its source in a different version of Masters of the Universe. Like we had Granomir was Filmation. The Havoc was from the CGI show. That's a big part of that show. The Goddess and Snakeman connection was sort of from the DC comics from a few years ago. So everything kind of came together to form a new cohesive whole. So I thought that was just interesting how they combined everything together to create that new continuity.
What did you think about the fact that when Tila gets the Havoc form, that they took elements from New Adventures Krita?
I thought that was really cool. I thought I was going a bit mad when I first saw it, because I was like, I'm just seeing things. It's me looking for new adventures and everything again. But you commented on it as well, I think, didn't you, John, as we were reacting to the episodes. And I think that there's definitely the hair, the overall, like the skin color, the little necklace that she's wearing. Those are all definite Krita elements. So I think almost certainly that was the intention there. which is nice. The one new adventures element in the show. If they ever do another season, please do something else. Please put somebody in. Have Slug be part of the Horde or something. I'd be thrilled, even with a cameo.
Can I jump in with another quibble?
Sure.
This is I tolerated it, I guess, in Revolution, and they did it again in Revolution, and I find it really irritating, which is, why do we have to keep renaming Skeletor? Skeletor is a perfectly fine name. If you need to modify it, like Dragon Blaster Skeletor or Battle Armor Skeletor, or any of the variations of Skeletor that we have had over the last 4 decades, then that's fine. But why do we have to keep calling him Skelegod and Skeletech and Skele whatever? Stop it. Okay, ran over.
No, since you brought up Skeletor, though, so okay, follow me here. I have a love-hate. Hate is a strong word, so I don't take it that far. But with the whole way they handled Keldor Skeletor, okay. Now I understand they only had 5 episodes, right? Okay, I got that. If you guys remember, though, so when Teela takes the Havoc staff, right? She becomes that kind of Krita Havoc lady, and her skin turns purplish blue, if you will. I thought the whole Anwar Gar thing was kind of unnecessary, because if you remember in the CGI show, like Keldor wasn't blue. You know, you could clearly kind of tell he was related to the royal family. And then Havoc, right? So the evil power is kind of what turned him into Skeletor. I thought it was set up perfectly for the same thing to happen in this one, right? If you had Keldor getting with Hordak, who gives him the Havoc staff, and this all is shown, right? But they had to do the more adult angle, I guess, and I think it was probably done to remain edgy, that he's, you know, the bastard son, as they say in the episode, of King Miro. I didn't think any of that was necessary. I would have thought he could have just been turned evil by being manipulated by Hordak and Havoc. So while I loved the performance of William Shatner, it was so rushed that he shows up from Anwar Gar, somewhere we never heard of unless you've watched 2000X, and he has this like technology or what have you. And then he's just like immediately made king. Convenient. And then it took like, 2 seconds for Skeletor to snap out of it and realize that he was actually Keldor. Like, he's a real person? Oh no, he's me. Like that. It was just like boom, boom, boom. And I understand they had 5 episodes, but I think they could have used the time in the 5 episodes a bit more efficiently if they had dropped this whole Anwar Gar thing that they didn't develop anyway.
So I agree that it's rushed. There's no question. And I mean, a lot of that is, like you said, 5 episodes. I get that. As far as though just the story itself, like I definitely prefer the idea of Miro and the bastard son and him being from Anwar Gar and all of that stuff, because it does help solidify and fill in Skeletor, in this case, I guess, unknowingly, or unconsciously or subconsciously, but it does give him that sort of motivation, right? Like, oh, I should have been king, but there was this terrible thing that happened to me that kept it from happening, and that sort of thing. Like, I feel like it's a more fleshed out, better, more interesting story that way. But there was bits and pieces of this one that were the story was fine. It was just that they were cramming a lot into a short span, and that I definitely don't disagree with. It would be great if there is more, if there are more seasons in this continuity, to see them flesh out some of the stuff that got glossed over.
True.
Either in flashbacks or what have you.
I think
Yeah,
this
I
was
think-
my favorite. Sorry. Just to disagree with John a little bit. This was my favorite treatment of Keldor so far, I think, in like all the shows. Sure, it felt a tiny bit rushed, but I don't know. It didn't feel quite as rushed to me, I don't think, as it did to you. And all of the little elements they added in, even if they didn't develop it much, like Awargar and all of that. And it gave a bit more reason for him to be away from the castle, the royal family, Eternos. Because if he's just around, I don't know. It wouldn't make as much sense to me that he was gone for so long and he's just now coming back. So
That's true.
that kind of
I can see that too, where like you're like, well, how do you get him to? How did he go away? Right? Like,
yeah.
like he's not the king and everything, but like, where did he go? Okay, he went back to his home nation. Okay, I can see that a little bit.
It's funny too. So like I also agree with you, John. Like Shatner was fantastic in the role of Keldor.
So good.
Yes.
One thing that did not occur to me till I was like all done with Revolution, and I was just kind of mulling it over for a few days and whatever. It occurred to me, we have seen in animated form Keldor 3 times. We've seen him in Mike Young, we've seen him in the CG show, and now we've seen him in Revolution. And it occurred to me after the fact that, you know what? I think one of the reasons Shatner was cast in that role is that Keldor has always kind of sounded like Shatner in the animated shows. If you go back and listen to Mike Young, it's clearly not Shatner, whereas this clearly is. Obviously, he has a very distinct voice, but the voice of Keldor in Mike Young and the voice of Keldor in the CG show has that same, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but that's that same kind of tone and resonance, I guess, that old Shatner's voice has. Like, not so much when he was in the 60s Star Trek show, because he sounds a lot different now. So it really was sort of genius casting, putting him in that role.
To piggyback too, just because they're the same character, right? I didn't feel like Mark Hamill sounded like the Joker in this one. To me, he sounded like Skeletor, and maybe because I'm used to him voicing Skeletor now, but I just thought he did enough nuance in Revolution that I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, it's just the Joker voice, which is what I kind of felt often in Revelation. So I thought he did a better job too.
Yeah, he really stepped it up, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Martin.
No, I was just going to say, I definitely agree with that, John. I think I remember complaining about this when we did our part 2 review. He has loads of moments where he slips into like Joker-esque, sort of the softer voice, where he's like, oh, He-Man, like that. He tones that down a lot in this one, and he only does that a couple of times. But I felt like in part 2, it was every other line he was just doing, oh, He-Man, like that, rather than the more sort of gravelly type Skeletor voice. He was much more consistent in this one with that, which I guess made sense for Skeletor's less drunk on power role in this particular season.
That's true.
I just have to give William Shatner, some extra claps for doing such an amazing job.
They should, in the next season, they should definitely introduce the Snake Man so that they can have Keldor shout, Khan! At some point. When
Yes, please.
Oh my goodness. So Earlier I mentioned that I thought they did a better job of pulling from pre-existing Masters lore rather than trying to shoehorn other things in and switch things around and whatever. There are a couple of bits of that I wanted to mention and get everybody else's takes on as well. One thing about this show that I was really glad that they did was maintaining the technological slant for Hordak, as opposed to like Wizard Hordak that we've had in some versions over the years. I've always preferred even though I'm much more a fan of the fantasy magic aspects of Masters. I liked the difference being emphasized between Skeletor and Hordak. Skeletor was magic, Hordak was technology, and they really played that up. I kind of wish they hadn't done the whole Skeletech thing, but whatever. But the fact that they maintained that rather than going with the sort of more wizardly Hordak, I appreciated. They brought Gwildor into it. I absolutely loved the back and forth with Gwildor and Orko with magic versus technology.
Yes.
It was so well done, and that sort of thing. They, of course, they brought in Granomir. They and Keldor, we've been talking about and stuff. They did a good job of, or like I said earlier, like organically pulling in these various pieces. I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the staff of Ka didn't that initially. I know it was heavily used in. I can't remember if it originated in the Ladybird books, but I think it might have. If not, it was in the early mini comics, I guess, and made its way into the Ladybird books. But they pulled a lot of this stuff from, live action movie and filmation and, storybooks and comics and what have you, and made it feel, really made it mesh together really, really well, so much better than in Part 2 of Revelation, when they were just doing weird stuff that didn't make sense. And I really appreciate how well that was done this time.
Even the way that,
go ahead.
Real quick, that Man-at-Arms talked to Gwildor was so spot on with the movie, I feel like. It was just, very reminiscent. I could almost hear those voice actors from the movie in those roles. They were so close and so amazing. Yes, and he's so cute. I remember the trailer came out and it showed Gwildor, and me and my husband were just like, oh my God, Gwildor! This was one of the best parts to me.
And how great was it that, like everyone always talks about the fact that Gwildor was like, oh, he's just the Orko substitute because they couldn't do Orko in the special effects, and then the two of them are kind of at each other's throats, right, at times in this and arguing about things. And I loved how they put all that together. It was so well done.
Something I want to point out with the Gwildor scenes, and you're talking about not only drawing from different aspects of the fandom, right? But there were a lot of, like, if you paid attention, there were a lot of little Easter eggs for like the hardcore fans in here. And if you were paying attention, I took a screen grab. The car that Gwildor drives in the live action movie is in the background outside of his hut. As you can see there behind Orko there.
That's great.
No, no, I can say.
So like I noticed that, and then the big thing. Now, see, this is what I like, these kind of things. So we knew that they were not allowed to use She-Ra, right? So like they were very open about that before Revolution came out. Like it was like, look, we were unable to secure the rights from DreamWorks. We can't use She-Ra, blah, blah, blah. However, what I love about this is, they didn't do anything to say that Adora and She-Ra are not there, right? Because she's very much a part of the Horde storyline. And as you all saw, of course, they did the baby stealing scene from that we saw, in the original She-Ra cartoon. And if you pay attention, there's 2 cribs, right? And the crib that is fallen over, there's a stuffed unicorn, right, coming out of the crib. So like there's little hints there to tell you, okay, Hordak just stole Adora. Besides the fact that they also framed the scene kind of in the same way as they did in the Filmation cartoon, including Hordak exiting with Adora through a window type of thing. So I thought that was particularly well done, and I absolutely appreciated that they put that. And I mean, it's like a flashback that lasts for what, 10 seconds in there, but it was just enough to skirt around not being able to use the She-Ra Adora character, but to still include it. And like, a casual person might have no idea really what was going on there. It might just look like they had invaded and, tried to attack Prince Adam or something as a baby. But people who are fans and know the Filmation cartoon, etc., would definitely, I'm sure, appreciated the inclusion of that scene.
Yeah, it really is too bad that they were not able to include that, because I think too it would have added a lot of like emotional depth storyline wise to Randor's death scenes and that whole part of it, because like it does. I mean, not exactly ring true, right? That like he's talking about Adam as if that's all there is in the family, and which obviously is not the case at this point. So I think there were opportunities unfortunately lost in that portion of the story because they couldn't get the rights.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah,
Mattel, spend the money, whatever it takes to get all of the rights under one roof. Just get it done.
Well, and to that point, like, I don't necessarily dislike the newer idea they have, which is, instead of like Force Captain Adora, she is Despara, which was in, spoiler alert, the end credits scene. Right. So like they were able to do that, which also opens the doorway right to Adora. But I guess they could also make Despara somebody else, which I would not approve of. I'm worried. There is a sequel comic book coming out, miniseries. And one of the covers, I think it's issue 4, who is Despara? So I'm optimistic because the comics have been able to use Adora and She-Ra in the past. So maybe it's just a issue of they were not able to secure the entertainment rights for a cartoon series, but that they were able to hopefully use her in the comic. I'll be interested to see that the sequel comic, because I guess I would say it was written with the notion that there's no more episodes on the block for this series, so it may give us a juicier ending with more Horde information and stuff. So I'll be looking forward to that.
I hope this does get picked up for more seasons, more episodes, however that works. It seems like it's been more successful than Revelation, and maybe they can use this as a springboard into giving us some more entertainment down the road here.
Yeah. And I'm sure the reason they didn't do this is because of rights and all of this, but I was bummed a little, like when Randor was dying, that he didn't say anything about Adora. He was just like, my whole family is here. Yay, I can die now. And it's like, but, and then towards the end, Marlena's like in the fight, I think, And
Yeah.
Hordak's around. I'm like, why isn't she screaming at him? Like, where's my dog? You know, like, that would have been hilarious. Just to have something else in there. But I do understand why, and I am very grateful that they gave us what they did.
There could have been a throwaway line, you know, like when Marlena and Adam were in jail.
Yeah.
I had hoped that there would be a throwaway line there, because you know how they always go with the whole Marlena knows more than you think she knows, she already knows he's He-Man and stuff like that. I thought like it would have been, even if it was something like referring to like, and Hordak has done more, you know, to this family than you even realize, or something like that, I think would have been an excellent line to just throw in there, because again, it could mean anything, but it also fits in what we know as fans.
Yep.
But I didn't write the episode.
Can we talk for a minute about the kind of the end of this series? I get why they did it. I get why they did it. I understand what they were going for. I even maybe reading too much into it, but I don't think so, because they did a couple of other things in there as well. It's got Star Trek overtones and all to it, and almost referencing back to a 60s Star Trek episode. But I found the whole, we're dissolving the monarchy, happy Independence Day, Eternia, that was kind of cheesy, over the top, and really not what I wanted, where I wanted the story to go. Like, I get it. I get what they were going for, but it really kind of rubbed me the wrong way too.
Well, it kind of makes out that things were bad under King Grandor. Which,
I didn't think of that.
Were they? That's like, everyone seemed okay. But when Adam dissolves the monarchy, they're all like, yay! I thought, oh, come on, it was all right. What are you talking about?
Well, and like, I'm always confused at the dynamics of Eternia as well, because like, I don't feel that King Randor was necessarily in charge of the whole planet. Like, especially since if you read the prequel comic, like they don't get along with Anwar Gar at all. That nation. And if you think to the CG show, you know, like they kind of made it so like the different areas kind of had their own thing going on. So the fact that he dissolves that monarchy anyway, like, I don't know. It was such a bizarre speech. I thought the speech that He-Man gave was not good at all.
It's so stilted. Like, yeah. It was like, this is where the story is going, so I will say what is necessary to make the story go there. That's what it feels like.
I mean, I like that, like, He-Man and Teela get their happy ending, and that they'll be, like, he chooses, like, I understand why they did it, right? Because if you go back to the first episode when Randor says, you know, basically you need to choose. Are you going to be the king, or are you going to be He-Man? And I think, like, he kind of did the best of both worlds at the end, right? He knew he picked the wrong king by letting Keldor be king. I think he sees that he's more valuable as a combination of Adam and He-Man, so therefore he shouldn't necessarily be the king. And since he can't pick the king, due to, you know, picking Keldor and that being bad, you know, he's gonna let people be elected. But like, then there was that throwaway line where like Teela already knew that Andra was like running for political office. I was just like,
that was random.
What is this? It's so random. So random.
Stop the count.
Yeah. I was just like I can't, like, Martin, you live under a monarchy, right? Like, can you imagine this? Just like,
but I don't know. It's sort of, I don't know. Like, I don't like, it reminds me, the feeling, I understand all the reasons against what I'm about to say, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Aliens movies. I don't know if anybody of you three have seen those, but like
It's
this
been a
first
while.
Alien movie, it's pretty good. And then Aliens, which is fantastic. And then in Alien 3, which is terrible, they undo all the good things that the heroes accomplished in Aliens in the second movie. And it basically makes that everything that they sacrificed, everything that they did, sort of meaningless in that second film. So a lot of Aliens fans, myself included, just pretend like the series ends at movie number 2 and nothing else happened after that. And this kind of leaves me with a similar feeling. It's like we've spent 40 years with these characters protecting the kingdom of Eternia from Skeletor. And now in a 30-second scene, we're going to say, no more kingdom. It's like, I don't know. It really, it just did not sit well with me. And as much as I enjoyed this series, I kind of wish they hadn't done that. There's so many other ways it could have gone. Story-wise, it didn't have to end necessarily with Adam/He-Man becoming king, and it just, I don't know, it just does not sit well with me.
I think if the speech was better, it could have sold me. The speech was just really bad. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really bad.
You know what? If it didn't feel so much like I can't remember the name of the Star Trek episode that I'm thinking of. I want to say that it's called Omega Glory, but I could be mixing up the titles of the 60s Star Trek series. There is a similar thing that happens there, and it's like it's like this weird transparent thing where we're declaring the United States Independence Day as a thing on this planet now, and that was the other thing, right? Like it felt so weirdly trying too hard to tie our world and the US whatever into Eternia. I don't know. I hate it when things do that too far. That's one of my most disliked episodes of Star Trek for the same reason. It's like it doesn't need to shift in that way, right? Like monarchies are, for better or worse, a very well established part of fantasy fiction. Or empires, alternatively. That sort of hierarchy is a very well established part of fantasy fiction. And whenever it goes into something more akin to modern democracies, we end up with the Star Wars prequels. And it's just I fear for that element of it if they do continue. Like I want another season. I want to see where else they go with these characters and this continuity. But that aspect of it, I worry, is going to go off the rails.
Yeah, I can totally see what you're saying.
I want an election race in the next season where it's like Andra running against Triclops for like presidency, and Triclops is like from some like crooked Andra. He's putting up anti-up posters everywhere.
The only I don't know, plus I can see for them doing it this way is, how would you explain He-Man and Teela not living together if they keep this relationship that they've established at the end? I feel like it'd be weird. Like she'd have to be in Grayskull and he'd have to be in the palace. I don't know. Like how else could they have done it to keep those together and keep her maintaining the guarding of Grayskull? And
well, they could have done a few things. They could have moved the royal seat to Grayskull, like and it had been the case in like days of King Grayskull or whatever. They could have
That's
done
true.
something along those lines. They could have, done something where, due to some whatever clause or whatever decision being made or tradition or however they want to explain it away, let Adam/He-Man pass the kingship to. I mean, he already did that, right? Like to Keldor, but like to someone more trustworthy. So, for example, Man-at-Arms, right? Like I could see that him being a perfectly suitable king or whatever. But there's like endless ways they could have done it without going the route that they did. Like that would have felt more true to the property to me, right? So
I actually love your ideas, Josh. Well done. And even Grayskull at this point, do they need to keep it looking like Grayskull, or can they just make it look like the Hall of Wisdom all the time?
That's true.
Yeah,
'Cause,
I mean, that
the
would have
Hordak
worked.
changed it.
That would have worked too, because like it's kind of coming full circle, right? If you accept the King Grayskull part of the mythos, which they clearly made part of this, because there's that King Grayskull statue, right, at one point in Revolution. The if you do that, it sort of comes full circle, right? Like, okay, well, destinies have been fulfilled. Teela has become the sorceress. He-Man is now king and will rules from the original seat of power on Eternia, which is Castle Grayskull. Like, they could have totally wrapped it up that way and made it made it come full circle rather than what they did. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that I personally, anyway, would have been happier with.
Yeah.
Well, I have something positive to talk about that I liked, that is surprising given anyone who knows me. And that is the fact that in Revolution, I was completely sold on Teela. I am now a Teela fan.
It's about time.
Because A, loved the voice actress change. To be honest, that performance fit her so much better than Sarah Michelle Gellar. Again, no disrespect to Sarah Michelle Gellar. Love you in Cruel Intentions. But not so much Teela. Then what I like is, I love a transformation sequence. Teela gets a transformation sequence. That does not, in my opinion, take away from the fact that Adora has a transformation sequence. Because I've always had a problem with, Teela is not Adora, Teela is not She-Ra. Don't do this. However, Teela's destiny is to become the sorceress. That I agree with. And I like Tri-Sorceress. I believe she even referred to herself as the Tri-Sorceress in this scene that I have the little screen capture of up. I love this costume. I love the concept of her doing the three powers, united as one. And that the costume incorporates the Eternian tower from the Eternia playset. All of that was fantastic to me. And so her story arc was annoying in Revelation to me. The way they wrote her here, I feel they wrote her better here because she also wasn't trying to one-up He-Man, if you will. She kind of was not even an equal. It's, I even like that they put in those cheesy lines where he was like, "Thank you for your help, my sorceress." And she was like, "Anything for my champion," right? So they did the whole dynamic, I feel, to shut the people up that were saying Revelation was the Teela show or whatever. You can still make Teela very powerful and put her on her journey, but you need to keep her characterization, I feel, correct. And I thought whatever pathway they changed for this one was fantastic. And like I said, I'm completely sold on this kind of conclusion to the whole arc that started in Revelation. So, and whoever designed this Teela look that I have on the screen should get a bonus check because I really loved the design. When I saw that and the transformation sequence, beautifully animated. It makes me want You know, in the Filmation cartoon, there was a few times when He-Man and She-Ra transform at the same time. And there wasn't anything different, right? But, you know, they kind of would cut between each transformation sequence. And this is what that reminded me of. So like, it makes me want even more, like, what would they do if like there was a double transformation sequence of He-Man and She-Ra? Like, I'm very excited for that. And I'm glad they kept the kind of Sailor Moon type transformation sequence that they did. What am I thinking? They did on the She-Ra Princesses of Power show.
You know,
Yeah.
You mentioned the voice acting for Tila. I think one thing where you have to give Melissa, what's her last name?
Benoist?
Okay, well, I'm gonna just not even try that. No, anyway, she did a great. Like, I am particularly. I find it annoying when voice acting changes in the middle of a series, or even actors in general change in the middle of a series. Sometimes I can get over it. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes I have someone I prefer. But she deserves also a medal for taking it over. I didn't have a strong feeling either way about being better or worse than Sarah Michelle Gellar, but she made it cohesive. She made it so I didn't think about it. It still was. That's just Tila, and it's fine. Whereas that's often not the case when there's an actor change. So I give her props for that for sure.
I enjoyed also, I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks this. I feel like she talks pretty fast, Melissa Benoist, but the way she does it, you can understand every word, even if she is talking quickly. So I feel like they were almost able to write more dialogue for Tila because she could fit it in a shorter time span. I have no idea if that had anything to do with the writing, but it was just like, wow, they're really compressing a lot of information into her lines, I feel like, and she delivered it really well.
I thought the dialogue in general in this one was better mixed in the series. There were lines that I still struggle understanding in Revelation, even having watched some of the episodes multiple times, whereas this one, it was a way better audio mix, bringing that dialogue forward and making it easier to hear.
I believe they did comment about that was a complaint, a valid, constructive complaint that was made for Revelation, and I believe they did come out and say because some of it was due to how the actors were recording during COVID. Mm. Whereas this one was probably all recorded in possibly a professional studio and maybe even the same studio. I'm glad you mentioned the voices, though. One thing I wanted to mention that I did not notice until I rewatched it, the second binge, was that so there's a scene where we get like a little bit of a backstory on Hordak, where he's explaining, you know, he has minions to do his fighting for him, and there's always every world has its own little champion, and they used Stondar as the champion, and he was voiced by Cam Clark, who was the
voice is awesome.
Of, Mike Young He-Man. And you didn't pick up on it until the second time I binged. I was like, wait a minute. That voice sounds familiar.
What was funny is I didn't realize it was Stondar initially, but I was like, that sounded like Cam Clark. I went and looked it up in the call sheet app, and I was like, yep, that's who that was. That was Cam Clark. That's awesome.
Well, and I had a fan failure moment too, because when I was watching, I was like, wait a minute, is that Stondar or is that Rock On? And I was like, I think it's Rock On.
It wasn't.
And I ran over. I have both Stondar and Rock On in this glass display where I have all of the vintage She-Ra toys because they were in the She-Ra cartoon. And I have them in their rock form. So I had to open them up. And I was like, oh, it is Stondar. It's not Rock On.
Stondar was the only rock guy that I had as a kid growing up. I never had rock on. I have rock on now in a couple different ways, but Stondar was the only one, and yeah, I always loved him. So I'm really glad it was Stondar, not rock on.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
real quick.
Yeah.
Because yeah, the second time around, I did turn captions on, even though I didn't feel like I needed them as much in Revolution, but I still just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. And there were a few things that I was just like, some were like, woohoo, and some were like, what? So does Pecksniffian mean anything? Because Skeletor says Pecksniffian prick. At one point, I'm like, what the hell is this word? What does this mean?
I had to look it up because I was like, what did you say? Is that a word? And it's like the word for a very sort of grandiose, pompous character. Like very big words and thinks a lot of themselves. So it does make sense in that context. So what a bring back Pecksniffian.
We have to say it 3 times in this episode to commit it to memory.
Well, did you do a drinking game of every time they said the word acolyte? Because that was like in every sentence.
It was a lot.
I was just like, did we get a thesaurus at this point? I've heard this word so many times.
Very cool.
A couple. Oh, go ahead, Martin. Sorry.
No, it did sound very cool when Keith David said acolyte as Hordak. He had a very good voice, so I was happy to listen to him whenever he was very cool.
He did an amazing job. I completely agree. Yes, there he is in all his glory. Beautiful.
The Hordak snorts, which was great.
Thank goodness.
No imp this time. Boo.
But the snorts were done like very tactfully, I thought. Like it fit. Like he wasn't snorting all the time, but and for anyone who's not sure what we're referencing, is Hordak snorts all the time in the Filmation cartoon. And
you do that well.
He did in the Mike Young cartoon as well. They let him briefly snort. So it's just a characteristic we expect from Hordak.
And when he turned into the rocket,
more subtly done in this, but it was a nice touch.
Yeah, for sure. And just 2 more things before I forget them with the whole caption thing. When Granomir screams in dragon language at the end when he's fighting the big robot thing, it says in the captions, like in English, "You shall not pass." And I was just like, that was the coolest thing.
Wait, before you go to the next thing, because you mentioned this, so I just want to, as like toy references that were in the thing. So you said what the thing that kills Granomir is this. Does it look like a variation on the Fright Fighter toy from the vintage line? That's what it looked like to me. Just throwing it out there. Because it was hard to tell. Like I did see when the Monstroids were coming up out of the ground. One of them was the actual toy that was the Monstroid.
Do you have a screenshot of that one? Because y'all mentioned it, and I wasn't sure which one.
I've got so many screenshots prepared for this. Absolutely, I have Monstroid.
Because that was my first thought when they started showing up. Oh my God, Monstroids.
Yeah, I think they could have used more actual Masters Universe toys in these sequences. Because they obviously have the rights to those. Those would have just been Mattel ones. They didn't use the Filmation Monstroids. It was just this toy. But I did think the other thing looked like a variation on the Fright Fighter, so I was just throwing it out there because I got all excited when I saw it, and then I was like, "Wait, is that the Fright Fighter? I don't know."
Maybe it was inspired by.
Inspired by. I like that. Okay. Anyway, that was my little.
I loved the line that Skeletor had. It was another one of those. Oh, this sounds like this could have been right out of Mike Young thing, but it made me laugh. It was like one of the good, funny lines we would have gotten in Mike Young, as opposed to some that weren't so good. where Skeletor says something along the lines of, "If you keep breaking my toys, you'll just have to play with the old ones." It made me laugh. That was a good line, good funny line.
There were
I
a
like that
lot
one
of good
too.
one-liners. And the alliteration, so much great alliteration.
I did think when he said, if you keep breaking my new toys, you'll have to play with the old ones, that at that point he was going to summon all of the evil warriors. Because we hadn't seen them for about 3 episodes, and I thought they were all going to come back at the end and help him. And I was a little disappointed that didn't happen, because Triclops didn't even get a line in this time.
Wow.
Like,
That's at some point I didn't even think of. There was a lack of evil warriors, and even only a few of or 3, well, 4 if you count Horde Trooper, appeared from the Horde line, and they didn't even speak.
Yeah. Did Beastman show up? Did I miss him? Or is he dead? Because they throw him in the pit at the end of the second part, and I was like, oh, I don't remember that. Surely he's going to come back. And I'm like, wait, no, I don't think he did come back. Crap. Is he actually gone? That's sad. He was so sweet to Evil Lynn in the second part.
Well, and they always pick interesting, how we got weird cameos like Pig Boy and stuff in Revelation. At least this time they did do, and I have to say, I like it that they gave some highlight to characters that we don't really see animated, like they did Rio Blast, even though I hated this toy as a child. But I loved his little pew pew, pew. Yeah. Just stupid little things like that, as kind of a throwaway character that's just there. So I do kind of appreciate when it's not always the same people, like Man-at-Arms all the time, like the earlier released people that were in the Filmation cartoon. So
yeah, I think I said it too during Revelation, and it was even more true in this one. There has always been that line, that fine line with the portrayal of Orko between childish and childlike is how I usually describe it. I disliked mostly the way that he was portrayed in Mike Young, as much as I like that show and that era. He was a little bit too far on the childish side, whereas Filmation, he was more on the childlike side. And they really, in both Revelation and even more so in Revolution, really nailed that characterization for him on the childlike side without veering over into the childish side that Mike Young tended to do.
Yeah, I could see that. And since John is putting up this amazing screenshot, no, bring it back. Orko making the rainbow. So, okay, if you're gonna make a rainbow, do it in the right order. It's backwards. The red should be on top, not on the bottom.
Well, but could it be like that because everything's backwards in Trala?
Yes, but the rainbows there were upside down.
Well, that's true. And you had valid complaints about Trala and its rainbows in Revelation. So yeah.
Yes, it still makes me angry. So angry. But it's they can't get rainbows right in this. I don't know why. But I love that there is a rainbow, even if it is wrong.
Just for you, Katie.
There were at least rainbowy effects. During the transformation and when Sorceress is up in the air doing lots of magical stuff, it was very sparkly.
Well, you said you had 3 things. What's the third thing?
Oh, the other thing was just a small thing. When Skeletor gets stabbed and he turns back into Keldor, and then he's just completely defeated, he sits down or something, and then he just goes, yeah. And it's in the captions, it's literally MYAH. It just makes me laugh so hard. It was well done.
Which I don't think he ever actually said that. I think that it's just a meme that's happened over the years. I think Alan Oppenheimer used to do some noises that sounded a bit like that. So he'd be like, like just screams. But I don't recall an occasion in which he ever actually went, meow. Like, unless I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think you might be right, but it's such a meme now that we just expect it. Like, hang on. I'll show you the shirt I'm wearing. See?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me happy.
Real quick, we were briefly talking about the toys like Monstroid and whatever. I just wanted to point out some other favorite moments of Revolution was when they showed the toy version of the Fright Zone. Like, they didn't have to call it the Fright Zone, which they didn't. They didn't have to specifically call it out. It was just like an organic part of the flashback when Hordak was training Keldor. So I thought that was beautiful. And really the interiors of when they would show Hordak at a throne in his, like, wherever he was in kind of in space, it looked like, it did at least give kind of like Filmation vibes, like, you know, it like an updated Filmation aesthetic. So I thought that was nice. And there was one other specific toy element that I wanted to point out that was by far I was very excited about, which was the use of battle armor He-Man, which is a design I've always liked. Like, when they've tried to make He-Man quote unquote less naked, I remember them saying like kids thought he was too naked or something in recent focus group things. I always thought, well, then could we go towards battle armor He-Man? I thought the design looked awesome in the show, and I loved, and I don't know if this was in the visual description for you, Josh, during the episode, but at one point, the battle armor chest plate is damaged in the show, and then it goes like, and it like spins up into not being battle damaged anymore.
Awesome.
And it's just very subtle. Like, they didn't make a big deal out of it or anything, but it was just visually very cool that it was like the toy. And I thought it was not like a toy commercial. Obviously they're not really selling the toy, but like it wasn't like a toy commercial. I liked how Andra as a Man-at-Arms, because if you think about it, in the Filmation cartoon, Man-at-Arms was often inventing things and giving it to people to use. So the fact that she made that like kind of a plate to put over top of his chest piece that then formed into the battle armor, I thought that was perfect. Perfect nod and a perfect. I want Flying Fist He-Man to appear in the sequel. So anyway, those are just two things I wanted to point out. I was very happy with them as a fan.
Can I point out something else real quick? Just looking at the notes I took. So when I was watching Revelation, I noticed that them saying, "Let this be our final battle." They've said it 3 times now. The episode 1 of part 1, episode 5 of part 2, both of those are Skeletor, and then Hordak says it in Revolution. And I'm like, okay, it's a great line, but when's it actually going to be the final battle that y'all keep talking about? But whatever. I just like that they kind of, all of these things I'm mentioning are just kind of bringing it full circle.
Wait, real quick with that. I think they originally put it in Revelation as a reference to the live action movie when it's like, you know, let this be our final battle right at the end.
Oh, I forgot
that's what I think
in the movie.
But I do feel like you said when Hordak said it, I was just like, why is he saying that line? Like, I was just like, be creative, people. Be creative. And before I forget, before you go on, Katie, one screenshot. Did anyone else notice that motherboard in Castle Grayskull looks like the Castle Grayskull of the live action movie? If you look closely, there's like the little skull there, and it's like kind of all shaped. It's like from the, I wish I would have grabbed a screenshot of Castle Grayskull from the live action movie, but I'm talking about like the opening sequence of the live action movie when he's like, you know, at the center of the universe, blah, 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 blah. And it pans in on Grayskull. If you look at both of them back to back, you'll see that is absolutely inspired by that Castle Grayskull design. So just pointing it out for
Nice.
anyone who didn't see that. But
This goes back to what I said at the beginning, right? Like they did such a great job of pulling stuff from all over the original mythos.
Yeah. I just, when you were saying that, John, that at the center of the universe or whatever, in the Revelation part 1 and 2, at the beginning, they say center of the universe. At the beginning of Revolution, they say the center of creation. And I was like, is that on purpose that they're changing it? And if so, why? Or was it just maybe due to the end of part 2 where Tila turns into Zor and with the snake biting? And
yeah, it was a little bit more of a religious thing, right? On this season, like it made me think of like Catholic, right? Like Father, Son, Holy Ghost type thing, like the three Trinity power really of Eternia. So that can't I speak? That could kind of mold into what you're saying with the change of the opening title sequence.
Yeah, that's interesting. The going back to what I was saying earlier about the D&D influence and stuff like that. In the Dragonlance books, which are sort of a spin-off of Dungeons and Dragons, the Dungeons and Dragons original company published way back in the day. In that universe, there are 3 gods that are part of the religions, and they kind of rule over and control some of the things that happen on Kryn, which is the planet that the Dragonlance books are. Very good books. Recommend them. Everybody should read them. If you like Masters, it'd be really hard not to like Dragonlance. But those 3 gods were Paladine, I think it's Gillian is the second one, and Takesis, the Queen of Darkness. But basically, it's good god, evil god, and the neutral god, and that's what this sort of reminded me of. It's like we had Zor, good god, Havoc, evil god, and Cause kind of can go either way.
And speaking of neutral, there were all the Zors at the end, and I almost lost it when he was like, today we learned a lesson, and starts talking. I was just like, ah! And Adam's like, what? And I'm like, he said today we learned a lesson. Are they doing a moral at the end? It's like, that would have been amazing. Which they didn't quite do. But it was still interesting the way they did it. I'm sure y'all caught a lot more of the characters as Zor than I did. Because I was like, okay, I'm sure these are people that we've been introduced to before, but I don't recognize them.
I thought it was immoral too, though. I think they did that on purpose.
Yeah, totally.
I think this kind of also helped explain away a weird quirk in the Filmation series where the sorceress turns into Zor, right? But frequently in the Filmation series, when they would refer to Zor, they would say he. Not every time, but every once in a while. And so that the fact that she was sort of turning into the Falcon, gaining, taking that power from Zor, this other god or whatever, and so they, it sort of helps explain away why they were not always consistent with the pronouns there. Between the god or the sorceress.
Speaking real quick of Zor, though, did you guys notice that when Motherboard turns into a bird, she turns into Screech?
Yes. Yeah.
So that was another nice nod. And we didn't even mention Meg Foster voices Motherboard, who was Eva Lynn in the live action movie. And I thought she was brilliant as Motherboard. Loved it.
Yes. I had forgotten that was her. And then during my rewatch, I paid attention. It was like, oh my God, yes. How did I not catch that? She's so amazing.
I would like to mention my personal favorite character in Revolution. Yellow Cat Crowdman, who shows up at the end of the series. Just in a very specifically lingering shot when he's reacting to something that's going on, and he's just like looking from side to side. And it was such an oddly specific design of this like weird big yellow cat guy in like a pink turtleneck. And I was like, who's that guy? Why have we focused on him? Is he important?
I will insert a screenshot. I can't find him in my folder.
Oh no.
No. But I kept looking at all the background characters after that guy, and I spotted like a yellow dinosaur man, and he's just in the background going like this. With his arm up, just, hey guys.
That's amazing.
I just enjoyed the background extras. I thought there was a lot of surprising amount of character in the background extras.
I know Leanne was disappointed that Stratos only showed up once in the background. I think it was at the funeral. And then, she was talking to us about this the other day, and she's not here, so I get to say it. She was like, yeah, he was at the funeral, but he didn't come to the coronation because he knew something was up. He was smarter than that.
Yes, unfortunately, Leanne is sick and couldn't make it today, but
Miss her.
we are on Team Stratos, not Buzz Off. So Buzz Off got more screen time. What's up with that? Nobody asked for Buzz Off.
It was like, he got more of a close-up. Stratos got. Looking forward to the
What did you guys think of? So I really also liked Evelyn's characterization in this, how she's like dancing on the, I think I'm going to be good, but I haven't really decided yet. And she had the funny, I actually thought funny, like, you know, Adam and Tila sitting in a tree, you know, Kissing. I liked that. I liked how she kind of redeems herself, because one of my complaints, again, as Revelation, right, is like, okay, you sent her to Trala for punishment for, you know, destroying heaven. Okay. Like, there didn't seem to be enough weight there. So I do think she makes it back, but I don't necessarily like the conclusion at the end that she is now going to be like a cosmic enforcer with the Zodak people. I don't necessarily. I liked that they mentioned her homeland, which comes from, you know, the Mike Young show. So that was in that scene, but I didn't really jive with why she was becoming a cosmic enforcer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't mind that aspect of it. The humanity listening tree was way over the top for me. Like, I did not enjoy that. But
wait, didn't enjoy what? Say that again.
The whole He-Man and Teela sitting in a tree thing.
Oh, I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, that was too over the top. But I prefer my masters a little bit more on the serious side most of the time. But if they were going, Evelyn has always been one of Master, like all the way back to Filmation, right? Has always been one of Master's more complicated characters, and she's always been somewhat ambiguous at times, and it's definitely evil, but, you know, she and Teela work together in The Witch and the Warrior and things like that. And they were definitely playing up some of that ambiguity in this one, and had her and Teela doing their thing with Grand and Mare and all of that stuff that was going on. So having her end up on the, Cosmic Enforcers, because Zodak is like the ultimate like neutral character in Masters, right? So if that is sort of what they're going for with Zodak's portrayal being, and the Cosmic Enforcers, I guess I should say, being maintaining the balance between good and evil, if you were going to pull a character out of the Master Universe lineup of characters that we've had over the years, and say we're going to make an existing character join the cosmic enforcers with Zodak and what have you, she's probably the most logical choice. I can't think of a better candidate.
I guess my point is we don't need a candidate at all. Like, I just feel that it's too easy. Like, she's just too, I think she should turn good. I like that. But I still think she has penance to do for what she did. And that putting her in that type of position, which is a very powerful position.
But it's maintaining the balance, right? Like,
Well,
I actually prefer
yeah.
this over her being good. I don't want her to be good. I want her to be sometimes good, sometimes evil, like Zodak has often been portrayed, and you're never sure which side he's on because the point is maintaining the balance for them, right? I could see her in that role.
Yeah, and they continued that with that multiverse comic that they did too. It was just a couple of issues where he had, like, the sorceress is proving to Zodak in every single multiverse that Adam is supposed to have the power or something like that. It's the general concept. I don't know. I guess I just feel maybe it was part of the rush, again, like the rushed storyline, that I just didn't understand why she was becoming a cosmic enforcer. Like, why that's the point of the ending of her story. I don't know.
Well, maybe they'll make more sense out of it if we get another season.
Quite true. Quite true.
Can you bring the screenshot up of the Zodaks again real quick? And I think I said Zors before when I meant Zodaks. Whatever, they start with Z. One of them has a weird beard thing. Yeah, what's with the tentacle beard guy?
Oh.
Yeah, because the other one is Strobo, right? So I don't know. I don't recognize that reference on the left, on our left.
Okay. Just want to make sure it wasn't just me.
Yeah, no, I think like what Wondar was in there. I didn't see 2000X Zodak though, with the blue tattoos, unless I blinked and he might have been there.
I'm sure I spotted him one shot.
Okay.
I was going to say I liked that we got Jeffrey Combs as the voice of Zodak. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the works of Jeffrey Combs. There's a lot of horror films, but also another Star Trek actor. He's played like multiple Star Trek roles. Whomst I have met. So that's my one Masters of the Universe cast member that I've ever met. Is Jeffrey Combs. There you go. I thought that was kind of fun.
What did we think of so He-Man and Skeletor get new costumes at the end? Now, He-Man's made sense to me because Gwildor modifies the power sword, which I loved that plot point. Loved it. Made sense to me. He transforms into He-Man and he has new armor. It's beautiful. I really liked that design, and I'm sure I have a screenshot if I can pull that out.
So, question, because I could not see it, but in my head canon, what I was visualizing, when Gwildor upgraded the sword, I was picturing the 2000X sword, which would have made a lot of sense with all the techno stuff on it. Was that not what it was?
No, but it does have it does mechanically open. Just it doesn't resemble or open in the same way that the 2000X.
That's too bad, because that would have been a nice nod as well, I think. That's interesting.
I agree. It was more like I have a screenshot up of it now. It was kind of more like the circuitry of, for lack of a better term, a motherboard, like in a computer, was added to the sword, and then the sword opens up. Whereas the 2000X one, as you know, it kind of like had it could turn, different parts of it turned and things like that. This was still pretty cool looking, but I agree with you. It would have been a very nice nod, especially because the 2000X sword also kind of has a little bit of an element of the New Adventure sword, if you will. So like they could have actually kind of melded all those swords together, like when it opened up or something.
It's really funny. I was thinking about this recently too, that the when 2000X was going on, I remember not hating but not loving that power sword from that era. Um, Even though there was so much else, like the character designs from that era are my by far my favorite Masters designs overall, for most of the characters. That sword though, like over time, like the original 80s style power sword is always going to be the power sword to me. But
Mhm.
I have a soft spot has grown for me for the 2000X sword that wasn't there at the time when that era was going on. But I do have a soft spot for it now.
Mhm. Well, just circling back, I guess the point I was making was He-Man's upgrade made sense to me. Totally made sense. With the upgraded power sword, amplifying the power of Grayskull, yada yada yada. What I didn't like, and again, this is probably because we had 5 episodes, but after Skeletor kills, well, we don't say kill because he didn't kill. When he gave a boo-boo to Hordak, and Hordak went bye-bye, it was just like Evelyn, I think, says the line. She's like, after she takes the Havoc, staff away from him or whatever, and he's like, I don't need that, girl. She has a line that she's like, and Skeletor has figured out a way to fuse magic and technology. And I was just like, how? What did he do to like have this epiphany? Because it's just like, boom, Skeletor gets a new look too and can do all of this stuff. And it was just like so fast that they had to get rid of Hordak. Which, don't get me wrong, that Skeletor Hordak battle was fantastic. I loved that, especially since Hordak, transformed into the rocket and everything, just like he did in Filmation. But once they got rid of him very quickly, it was just like boom. Now Skeletor knows what to do. So I just think that was a little bit of convenience on their part, to give Skeletor a new look, since He-Man had a new look. I don't know.
I thought it would have made sense if Skeletor had just absorbed Hordak's power, like after the battle. I thought that's the way it was going, because I thought, why does Skeletor now have transparent arms, like the glowing transparent arms? I didn't quite understand that. Although I liked the look, like I look forward to that figure, I was confused as to why he suddenly looked like that. Like it would have made more sense to me if he'd used magic to steal Ordak's technological power and fuse that with himself.
Now that would have been cool. Like, because he had that dark magic kind of swirling around Hordak at the end. Yeah, like if we would have seen like the tech parts of Hordak kind of like become dislodged from him, which would actually also explain why he looks so limp and lanky in that tube at the end when Despara, when you find out he's not dead. That would have been good. See, boom, right there. All we needed was another 5 to 10 seconds of animation.
I suppose I still would rather have Skeletor the wizard than Skeletor the cyborg.
Well, but I mean, he is like, I did like the aspect of like the epiphany of like, oh no, he's actually, so how you said earlier, you really liked how in this iteration they kept Hordak was way more on the technology side and didn't like magic, whereas in Mike Young, Hordak was kind of more, he did that seance thing to do the light and dark hemispheres
and a
stuff.
lot of mini comics and stuff like that too, portrayed him that way.
So I do kind of like, even though I feel that Hordak is such a better villain than Skeletor, but I will give Skeletor props because I actually think this is a really awesome plot point that he would figure out it's not just magic or just technology. I'm going to actually use them both to my advantage, right? Instead of Hordak having, like Shadow Weaver doing the magic stuff for him and not necessarily. I kind of liked that Skeletor was perhaps now the ultimate evil, like the ultimate threat, because he was going to master both of them. So I kind of like that. I do, but I just wish it was fleshed out like how Martin had described it. But yeah, what can you do? One technological advance, if I may, since we've been positive here for a while, I would like to go into a negative. While I absolutely loved Man-at-Arms' new costume, because it reminded me of as an homage to the vintage toy Extendar. The costume looked a little bit like Extendar's. What I did not like is he became Iron Man. Like, to me, he was like Iron Man. Like, he's, you know, there's jets coming out of his boots and he's flying around in the air like he's Iron Man. Like, that's that. I just didn't like that aspect. I think they should have used Extendar powers, perhaps not Iron Man. That's just my one little complaint. Nobody else cares.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The radical redesigns. This was in Revelation 2, the different versions. Like, really, do we have to have an entirely new look for every character all the time? Like, I know it's to sell the action figures that will inevitably get produced of these things, and some of them are fine if they're justified for the story, but boy, oh boy, I have character redesign fatigue sometimes with some of the newer stuff.
I do think like some of the redesigns are just kind of them giving them a more slightly modern look for this animation style.
That part's fine, right? That's what they did for 2000X almost exclusively, right? Like, that part's fine. But I don't think we need. I mean, how many across Revelation and Revolution? How many different costumes does Skeletor have? Like, or whatever, outfits, designs, whatever. Like, it's just it's a lot. It's like they're overcompensating for the fact that there was no variation in filmation with He-Man or Skeletor or Tila or Man-at-Arms or whatever. It's just, I don't know.
Well,
I just,
you know what would have fit was they could have, like, they used battle armor He-Man, right, in this. They could have used, I feel like Terraclaw's Skeletor would have fit very well at the end. Or even, like, they could have did a homage to, like, what was it, like Discs of Doom Skeletor from New Adventures. I think would have also fit that look. But yeah, instead they just kind of, you know, redid brand new things. What you gonna do? They want to sell the toys. Though they could have made, you know, Terraclaw's toys and things like that too. I think a lot of times people want to put their own spin on things as well. Like, they want their stamp, if you will, on the property. I don't know.
I at least like that they incorporated a lot of elements to make He-Man's design, especially. If you bring him back up, I'm sure you, John, could point at like every little thing and say where it came from. Because like the hair reminded us of New Adventures, and then he had the breastplate design from CGI. And what am I forgetting?
The movie cape.
Yes, movie cape. It was beautiful.
Yeah, like, I even went further than that. Like, you can argue that even like color scheme, they're paying a little bit of a tribute to She-Ra, also with a red cape. I squeed. I saw that the ponytail. I immediately thought of New Adventures. I do think his facial structure and the haircut, also in general, is Dolph Lundgren from the live action movie. You already mentioned the elements from the new CGI. I actually do really like that new symbol for He-Man, which I did like in the CGI show as well. So yeah, I thought those were... This design here has a lot of nods even though it's new.
Yeah.
The Skeletor one did not, in my opinion, have as much of an homage to other things. So,
Yeah.
missed opportunity, perhaps.
The only thing I recognized on the Skeletor design was that he has like the epaulets from his 200X outfits, like the little shoulder things.
Mm.
That was the thing that I noticed.
Oh.
Other than that, it seemed quite a redesign to me. Although his face gave me sort of New Adventures.
It does, especially with the red eyes. Too. Also makes me think of Mike Young, and yeah, it does. I mean, the facial structure absolutely looks, and the skin kind of tone, the skull color tone looks like New Adventures.
Yeah.
I loved his crown. I liked just how they incorporated the crown. It's hard to put a crown on someone with a hood, but they pulled it off. I think it's pretty cool.
You know,
I just accepted it and think about it.
I loved the line when Andra asks Keldor why isn't he wearing his crown, and he like gives some like, you know, whatever answer, but says that like, so I just left it at home, and then it's, you know, it's sitting on Motherboard's throne, and then He-Man's like, oh no, what a stupid person I am. That was some good writing there. I liked that.
Yeah.
The dynamics of that scene.
Yep.
You got some. I enjoyed the Star Trek reference. I'm laughing at the superior intellect. I thought was a great Shatner reference to Replicon.
Now these references, like, well, so I wouldn't necessarily know those Star Trek references per se. Just like, you know, in Revelation, I didn't know one of the lines was from like lifted directly from Lord of the Rings. But I think the lines that they chose for this did fit better than like when Marlena randomly said "as if" because she was, you know, Alicia Silverstone. Like those type of things don't fit. But these ones actually fit for what is going on. And I loved that you pointed out, he said that you shall not pass, but he said it in dragon language instead of actually saying it. So like little clever things like that I can appreciate more than just repeating the line, I guess, too.
Yeah, true. There was also a bit of foreshadowing I noticed this time. I guess it's at the end of part 2 where there's all the shadow beasts in the battle, and there's the big shadow dragon, and it falls to the ground almost the same as Granomir. So I was just like, ooh, I wonder if they were already planning at that time that they were going to do that. It was just, yeah, a cool little detail.
Isn't it? It's kind of neat too that they tapped so many Star Trek actors for this, and it's like but it doesn't make it feel like it's a Star Trek episode or something. It's just these people, like the amount of emotion that Dr. Crusher, Gates McFadden did on Marlena, like, and not a big role, right? Not a big role, Queen Marlena, but just the depth that her performance gave to that character. I was madly impressed.
Yeah,
like,
she was really good.
So good. So good.
And like John Delancey didn't sound like Q this time. Like a lot of things I've heard him in, I mean, I love him and I love him as Q, but like in My Little Pony, I feel like his character was just another version of Q. But Granomir, I feel like he really like purposely did not go that route, and I appreciated that it had a different tone to it. Did a good job.
Well, I wish they could have had, even if it was just like a one-off character or something that said a line, they really should have got, since they were on a Star Trek thing, if they would have used Robert Duncan McNeil, who was on Voyager, he was also Kevin in the live action movie. And I think that would have been awesome. But I was expecting him, to be honest, to show be like a throwaway line or something. Like he could have been one of the one of the character. Like he could have been, I don't know, Rio Blast or Buzz Off or something. That would have been funny.
God,
I
that
also,
would've
I'm
been
not,
so good.
I didn't even look to see whoever did the voices for Too Bad, I thought were also really good. I loved the Too Bad scene. I thought that was
Jason Mewes.
perfect. It was really good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
They reminded me of like Statler and Waldorf Muppets. He's like, a Snake Mountain, you said. They're always hiding, you said. And it just reminds me of them in the little booth.
Oh, so good. It was so good.
Yes.
Little things like that we appreciate. We definitely appreciate.
Big time.
I'll tell you this doing this podcast has made me want to go rewatch Revolution immediately.
Yes.
Again.
So I think I said earlier, I did not on purpose watch Revelation before this, right? But I did binge twice Revolution. My problem with watching, and I'd like to know your opinion on this, Katie, since you did rewatch Revelation beforehand. Does watching Revolution improve your experience with Revelation, or do you watch Revelation and be like, oh, this would be so much better if? Because like I said, history, for people who don't know, I don't like Tila. Just don't like her. Okay? I like Adora. She is capable. I don't like Tila. I love Tila in Revolution. Like, who would have thought you could make me like this character? But I did not like her in as normal, right? In Revelation. And it's just like, I feel like this, comparatively speaking, is just so much better. And I've had no desire, I hate to say it, really no desire, before this was coming out, to watch Revelation again. I mean, I know people, no offense, Martin, don't like the New Adventures, but I watch New Adventures episodes from time to time. But I don't pull up Revelation. And it's easier to pull up Revelation than it is New Adventures. So, I'm worried that it'll make me dislike it more because I like Revolution so much. So what do you think? Like, should I do it? Should I go back and rewatch it?
I don't think it's really going to change your opinion, because when I rewatched part 2, it was the same things that bothered me, like Evelyn's parents turning into cannibals. I was like, oh my God, I had scrubbed that from my brain. It's so dumb. And oh, there it is again. So things like that, seeing Revolution first, is not going to affect. And I think it even made me appreciate a few things in Revelation more than I did the first time around. So at the very beginning with Orko and everybody, where it's very Filmation-y, it was like, oh, I kind of missed that. I mean, there was some elements of that in Revolution, but not as obvious, maybe. So it really made me appreciate that. I think the voice actor who did Cringer did a better job in both parts of Revelation compared to Revolution.
Ooh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I didn't really like him in Revolution. It wasn't very strong. It was odd performance.
Like the lines were good. Just his delivery of them was like,
It's like he kind of had like 10 minutes to hurry up and come in and record the couple lines that he said. That's kind of how it felt.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think we'd be okay rewatching it. Good.
Are you guys familiar with Machete Star Wars?
Is that the order that you watch them in?
No, exactly. It was an edit. This was probably 10, 15 years ago. There was an edit of the Star Wars movies. I think there was instructions for how you could watch it yourself, but basically the idea was that you watched the original trilogy of Star Wars, and then you would intersplice in bits and pieces of the prequels as like flashbacks. And it basically eliminated everything that was terrible about the prequels and just kept a few gems that were here and there. I feel like something similar I wish somebody would do with Revelation, like do a re-edit of those 10 episodes and just cut out all of the things that don't work. And you could probably get a, you know, somewhere between 5 and 7 episode edit of it that is much better than it in its entirety right now, which might also flow better into Revolution, right? Because most of the problems with Revelation, at least in my opinion, are in the second half. And it would be interesting to see if you know, some fan project at some point could come along that that cuts the Revelation down and tries to pull out all the good stuff and kind of ditch some of the stuff that didn't work. It'd be interesting, very similar like what they did with the Machete Star Wars.
That would be interesting.
I agree. I think it could be done too. You could totally trim it down because there was a lot of fat, for lack of a better way to say it, in Revelation. Well, maybe I'll try it. I was interested to watch it all the way through, like Revelation 1, 2, then Revolution. You know, obviously end with the dessert at the end that tastes really good. So yeah, maybe like it can be just like if you recall She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. There was like a season in the middle there that was just like, oh, what are they doing now? Like this was so good and it's getting a little weird, and then it like picked back up and got better. So maybe it would feel like that. Like there was just kind of that little lull in the middle until they get that upswing back up.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any other super pressing points we want to make? We are approaching the 2-hour mark.
I
Checking
don't
my
think
notes.
I've got anything else.
I think we're pretty good.
When
Okay.
sorry, Orko has the sword at one point and goes, by the power of, and then they like stop him. And then Gwildor later on does the same thing, but he just says, I have the, and then stop. And I just thought that was adorable, but I kind of also want to see them both transform because that would be hilarious.
They were oddly a great team, even when they were arguing.
They seriously
little-
were.
Line at the end through like, I think those two have got the hearts for each other.
No
It's next.
shit.
That really made me laugh.
You know, I'll throw one last comment in here too. I think watching Revolution also made me kind of miss the old days of Filmation, where you know we had Revelation Part 1 and 2. We had Revolution. Does every story now? I get it to a point, I guess, but does every single story have to be the end of the universe? We must save the universe. We must save the planet. We must, you know, these enormous stakes. I would love to see, you know, if they did another season, an episode or two or whatever, just some sort of like side story, side plot or whatever, where it's, hey, we're going to go on a quest for X thing that's lost in the sands of time or whatever. Like so many of the Filmation episodes were, where it's not super high stakes. It's just a fun adventure for our heroes and villains to face off during. And I kind of wish it didn't have to be, you know, the end of the world for everything.
I think that's a negative we get with this type of storytelling that is expected these days. Like,
yes,
meaning like a continuous story arc, right? Because like Filmation, you had your like a ton of one-off episodes, right? I mean, like you could basically, for the most part, go into any Filmation episode and it's a contained story.
Yeah.
And what I don't like is, it's interesting. I was talking about this with someone else recently. I don't even remember who it was, on how like that type of storytelling, like the Filmation stuff, right? Today is looked down upon, right? Oh, there was no overarching story. You know, it's not like a soap opera, right? Like where it's like this continuous thing, but there is value to that. Like you just said, like a contained episode. Like, I just love watching the Dragon Invasion, which is a Filmation episode I've always loved of He-Man. It's a contained story. Nothing, there's, you know, there's small stakes, and it's resolved at the end of the episode. There is something to be said about that, like not needing it to be like you said. It's like, oh my gosh, there's this huge thing we have to resolve at the end.
Yeah, no, the new series of Star Trek films, the last one didn't do as well, and yet it is Star Trek Beyond, and yet it is one of the ones I enjoyed all three of the new Star Trek movies, but I really enjoyed that last one because it wasn't we have to save the Earth from, which basically the first two were to some degree or another, whether it was Khan and the Into Darkness or Nero, who was trying to did destroy Vulcan and then went on to destroy Earth, tried to destroy Earth. It's like, doesn't have to be save the world every single time. And Star Trek Beyond was more like an episode of Star Trek and some high stake type stuff going on. And it was definitely, bringing the characters forward and stuff, but it didn't have to be, the universe is in jeopardy again. Like I after a while, it's just kind of, you end up repeating yourself a little bit, and I would love to see some fun fantasy adventures with this group in this continuity at some point. Even if it's like, it doesn't have to even be short, like a single episode contained, but just like a subplot that they have to go find something or whatever that's contained within a couple of episodes or whatever. They could make it work within the larger storyline if they wanted to still do that sort of storytelling. But
yeah, like a B plot, but a strong one, exactly. Like that has focus.
Right. So we need. I feel like we do. There's something definitely that could be explored there.
Didn't they do some of that in the CGI show?
More so than here, yeah, I would say.
I wonder if part of it is just writing for kids versus writing for adults.
Show is terrible.
No, it's not. It's great.
It's good.
I do not like it. I can't.
Well, me and my nephew love it, so stick my tongue out at you. But yeah, I wonder if adult watchers are more expecting this massive arc.
That's true. And this was. I saw actually some, interesting enough, I saw complaints online about Revolution about some of the content in it. But this was not marketed. I understand it has He-Man, which is traditionally a children's toy line, but the toys in the aisle at Walmart and Target say adult collector on them. And this cartoon was absolutely marketed. It was not marketed towards children. That's what the CGI show was for. So while I understand it might be lovely for you to watch this show with your children, as I advise to any parent, and I am not a parent, so who am I to advise to them? But I always advise, watch it first. And here's why. My dad went to the movie theater and saw the Masters of the Universe movie on Friday when it came out, meaning in 1987. I was I was literally 4 years old when the movie came out. So he went and saw it. He deemed it was okay for me, and then he took me on Saturday. Like, that's how I feel you should operate. If you're, there's a rating on the Netflix for the cartoon, and so yeah, I think it has to do, long story short, with it was an adult story cartoon, which is why they feel they have to have that type of beginning, middle, end to the story that we're driving towards. Yeah. But in any case, I think we all really loved Revolution, so that's a positive. It has had positive fan reaction that I've seen online for the most part as well. So kudos to the creative team, especially our friend Ted, who got to, not only is he an executive producer on it, but he voiced Gwildor, and he did an amazing job and I loved his Billy
Great as
Barty
Goldor,
impression. Yeah, so spot
Yes.
on.
Yes.
And all of Revolution is available on Netflix, so I suggest subbing to Netflix and binging it multiple times during the month if you're going to cancel it later. I'm also told you need to give it the thumbs up on Netflix. That helps their algorithm. So binge it and give it the thumbs up. That's what I did. I had my dad do it on his account. Like, get your
Nice.
friends. We want to see more of Masters of the Universe. Thanks for watching Masters Cast, the podcast. You can check out all of our old episodes, and by old I mean like back to like 2005, are all on all popular podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify, or go to masterscast.com and figure it out from there. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe and the like button, because it doesn't cost you anything, but it's wonderful for us if you enjoyed our company. And as always, because on Eternia, you do not say goodbye, you say
Good.
good journey.